There's a particular kind of loneliness that doesn't make any sense. You're not alone. You're at the dinner. You're in the group chat. You're sitting across from someone who cares about you. And still something in you is not reachable. There's a distance you can't close, a sense that nobody's quite getting to the part of you that most wants to be gotten to. That's the loneliness people rarely talk about. Not the loneliness of the empty apartment, the loneliness of a full room. Because we're taught that loneliness is a math problem, not enough people, not enough plans. So we try to solve it by adding more socializing, more company, more contact. And sometimes you do all of that and you come home and the feeling's still there waiting for you. Which means it was never really about the number of people. Something else was shaping every one of those encounters, quietly enough that it was easy to mistake for loneliness itself. And to see it, you've got to look at the feeling differently than we usually do. Let me give you the tool I use to take something like this apart. I work in a framework I created called psychological architecture. And the idea behind it is that whatever you're going through, you're really going through 4 different things at once. There's the way you're reading the situation. There's what you feel about it. There's what the moment seems to say about who you are. And there's what it all ends up meaning to you, how much it matters. Excuse me. Mind, emotion, identity, and meaning. And the part that matters most is that these aren't sitting in separate rooms, in separate categories, in separate boxes. Because if you push on one, it will push on the next. So let's follow loneliness through all 4 of those domains. And let's start where it actually starts. Not with being alone, with something you believe about yourself. Because underneath that loneliness in a full room, there's usually a quiet conviction about who you are. That's identity. And it sounds something like this. There's a part of me nobody really sees. And if they saw it, I'm not sure they'd stay. So I keep it back. I hold it back. You might not say it that plainly. You might not even notice you believe it. But it shapes how you show up. You bring the version of yourself that's easy to be around, the agreeable one, the composed one, the funny one, the one who's fine. And you keep the rest, the need, the doubt, the parts that feel like too much, you keep those just out of view. And here's the move that turns into loneliness. Before you can feel lonely, connection itself has to stop meaning what it used to mean. That's meaning. Because if closeness no longer counts as being known, if the person they're warm toward isn't the whole of you, then the real affection can't reach you. Someone compliments you, includes you, tells you they care, and it doesn't land on the place that's actually lonely, because the place that's actually lonely was never in the room. You've been loved for the version of yourself you've presented, which means the part that came hoping to be found still hasn't been found. That's the engine of it. Connection stops being the thing that could relieve the loneliness because you've quietly arranged for it to miss. And that revised meaning produces a feeling. That feeling is emotion. The ache in the crowded room, the flatness after a good evening. And here's the thing, it doesn't feel like something you're doing. It feels like something that's just true about you. Like proof. You see, even here, with all of these people, I feel alone. There must be something wrong with me. And now watch the last move, because this is where the loop closes. That feeling feeds straight back into mind, into how you read the next room. It becomes evidence for the very belief you started with. Of course nobody reaches me. Nobody ever does. So next time, you hold back a little more. You show a little bit less of who you are, which guarantees the next connection is gonna miss too, which proves you right again. The loneliness manufactures the conditions that keep it true. That's the architecture at work. And seeing it is what takes it apart. Because the loneliness of the full room was never a shortage of people. It was a self kept out of reach, so no closeness could ever quite touch it. You weren't failing to be loved. You are making sure the love couldn't find the part of you that needs it most. And this is where distinction matters. One, we tend to blur, because being alone and being lonely are not the same thing. There's a version of solitude that isn't lonely at all, where you're by yourself and completely with yourself. Nothing hidden, nothing held back, because there's nobody to perform for. And there's a version of company that's profoundly lonely, where you're surrounded and still concealed, which tells you something important. Loneliness isn't simply the absence of people. Sometimes it's the absence of the self that wanted to meet them. The distance you feel from others begins with the distance you've already placed between the self that wants to be known and the self you let into the room. Which means the room was never empty. The person, the version of you who most needed to be known simply wasn't there.